Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. I'm Monica Gibson. Jean-François Owczarczak joins me back in the studio for one of our regular programmes. Let's have a look at what the charts are telling us this week. Jean-François, thank you very much for coming back in.
Hi Monica, thanks for having me back.
Nice to see you now. We have quite a busy week. It's that time of the month again when we have the ECB and the non-farm payrolls sort of double header at the end of the week. So what are the charts telling us at present? Okay, well let's see. Yeah, I think we have the ECB press conference on Thursday and we have non-farm payrolls on Friday. So it's going to be quite an interesting end to the week. Let's look at what the charts have for us. We're back on our standard mosaic that we use for this Dukascopy show, and it's a daily view, and we have euro dollar, we have cable, we have Australian dollar, we have gold, dollar Swiss, dollar yen, 3 months S&P futures, and 3 months long bond treasury futures. And so you can see that the upper line is all negative, yes, and the line below is also a positive on a daily basis. Indeed. So the trends that have been in place for the last few months are still going at the moment, and we'll see how we think that at the moment the trend is your friend, even if it's getting quite extended. So let's look at the euro, and we're here on an investor's view, and we still have a bear over our weekly chart, a long-term chart, where our perspective is envisaged in quarters. We still have a bear on our daily chart, perspective over the next few months, and we still have a bear on an hourly chart, a perspective over the next week or so. Right. So if we look at the weekly is negative again. It was in a correction up from mid-2012 to early 2014. It's now back in an impulsive downtrend. It still has some time to go, so the projections we have here are probably valid over the next 3 to 4 quarters. And it's showing us that given the current volatility, targets could be envisaged below 120 down to about 110. Now if we look at the daily, we see that the daily's been heading down since the spring. We're slowly getting into the impulsive targets. There's still a bit more time to go. We think it's probably could continue up until early November. It could trigger an impulsive 2 target, which would lead to targets below 125, but at the moment it pretty much is exhausted on an impulsive level. What is important here is that, well, you're still in a bear trend. There's still a bit more time to go. So although we can't really confirm an impulsive 2 yet, it's still moving down, and the trend is your friend. Now if we look at the hourly, it's been moving lower every week. And in terms of our targets, there still seems to be a bit more time to go, and we can make it down to the 126 level. So as for now, we would respect the trend, which is confirmed long-term, medium-term, and short-term, and probably consider that over the next week we'd still be in a downtrend. Excellent. We also had going to have a look at the euro-yen, I believe. Is that? Well, no, it's well, we could look at the different pairs quite quickly. Cable. In a correction down, still in an uptrend over the weekly, but in a correction down. Quite a bit more potential on the daily over the next few months, which may confirm the further downside potential on the euro. And also after a brief correction here on the hourly, with the Scottish vote and its the anticipation of the no vote over the last days running up to I think it was Thursday 10 days ago, we see cable rolling over again and positioning itself in a downtrend again. Now, dollar yen still moving up. We're getting quite close to the target potential, but again, the trend is your friend. We had been envisaging about 110 for the last year or so. We made the targets. Now there's still a bit more time to go. On a daily basis, getting close to the targets too. Now, the first envelope impact usually signals an intermediate top, so we're not ready to turn a negative here yet either. We think we probably might see a temporary correction, but it's still an uptrend. Pretty much exhausted here on the impulsive 2, but again, there's still a bit more time. It's still heading up, so it looks topish, but I don't quite want to trigger it yet this week. And so the trend is your friend. You have 3 bulls respected for now. Now gold. Gold has been heading down for the better part of 2 years. The
The weekly still is showing targets below 1170 down to about 957, which would be quite a large move. There's still time left in terms of how long this move could last. So still negative on it and quite a bit of downside potential still. And the daily is not really an exaggeration. You do see a bit of stress here, but it looks intermediate. And there's still potential, probably also towards November, to the downside, somewhere between 1180 and 1120. The hourly is still heading down, slight consolidation last week, but it hasn't been a very large move either. And now finally on the S&P, well, the weekly is still an impulsive too, so quite some aggressive targets. We don't calculate impulsive free, but it still is about 10% that could be made here over the next quarters. So as for now, the trend up is still in place. On the daily, a bit exhausted, but it hasn't turned yet. You're still in a bull. And we've seen quite a lot of these impulsive in the hourly, as we're going to see, of these intermediate consolidations this year. And each time, it made it down into our impulsive targets on the hourly and started up again. And so we would focus on this move here. There's probably a bit more to go to the downside, probably between 1950 to 1930. But then we should be short-term exhausted yet. And as the daily and the weekly are still heading up, there would be a chance to find support and move up one more time.
Okay, certainly is a bit of room for manoeuvre. Lots of targets there, lots of great points for us. Thank you very much, Jean-François, for coming back in and telling us what the charts are pointing out. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, well that's all from Jean-François and myself for another Monday, but make sure you keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV for all the hourly updates. Goodbye for now.